In a faraway slice of the megaverse, the inhabitants of Flova are preparing for a mission to a mysterious, primitive planet. What they find there will change the course of their history forever. And maybe yours, too. Put on some headphones and harness the power of your imagination with the illustrated podcast, Flovatar, a Dust Odyssey.
What are you, RoboCop?
Earth guest guffawed.
I told them at corporate I didn't want them sending stupid robots here to my area. You can't replace us mall cops. We're an institution.
Paul knowingly turned to Floyd and commanded.
You heard him. Leave him alone.
Upon command, Floyd latched his vice-like hand onto Mall Cop's leg, and Paul stuck past them, learning a few Earth swear words on the way out. He knocked over the Mall Cop's transportation device as he left, the double-wheeled uni-scooter looking like an early prototype of a hovercraft. Without stopping, he ran toward a set of moving stairs and held onto the railing as he was catapulted upward to another level of the mall. Now, nothing smelled like dust, but whatever mix of smells he was experiencing made him follow his nose like a likey at breakfast time. At the top of the stairs, he encountered a sight so incredible he had to shield his eyes. There was an immeasurable amount of food from around the world. It must have been the finest cuisine available, shipped in from various countries. And he could pick anything he wanted. He learned about rice, burgers, noodles, French fries, and he was ready to try it all. While heading toward a counter with golden arches over photos of burgers, he spied two young kids departing from their table and leaving behind half-eaten triangles. Now hungrier than he had ever been, he sat down and shoveled one of the slices into his mouth. The pizza had chunks of sweet yellow goodness on it, and he absent-mindedly munched on them. Curiously, he wondered if these items had any dust on them. He pulled out his dust detector and pointed it toward the food. When it scanned the salty and sweet combination, the spec counter dropped to -50, becoming unbearably hot and short-circuited. On the opposite end of the upper floor, Fasco and Gellin strolled into an intriguing store and then quickly raced out after seeing what was inside.
That man said they had toys inside,
Fasco cried.
I thought it was a store for kids.
Those were not for kids.
Gellin grimaced, then sniffed, taking a whiff of a sweet, enchanting scent.
Let's try that place.
They entered a bright and colorful store with endless jars, bottles, and waxy slabs in glass. Sticking their noses in everything available, they learned the smells of pine, sandalwood, mahogany, citrus, and something named rose blossom that smelled like the older relative that you were forced to hug once a year.
Pulls on had a terrible scent like this all the time. Can't believe he's complaining about the smell here on Earth. He should be used to rancid aromas. Wonder if his nose changing really does have something to do with it.
Why is Pol so angry at you?
Gellin set down the candle and took a breath.
Because he doesn't like being called out when he's wrong. He always did what he wanted. He still does, you've seen him, even when he hurts people in the process. He's always on about his freedom and how he's not a slave to Flova Labs. Well, is it really freedom if you're making life worse for others around you?
No.
She answered.
But
She thought of her mom and how leaving had hurt her. Maybe she had been too harsh. Maybe she shouldn't have left at all.
I couldn't defend him anymore. He refused to follow the rules. Okay, enough. Let's get out of here before my head explodes.
Gellin commented, heading toward the exit. The pair eventually arrived at the same sporting goods store that Franklin and Nick had explored. Fasco noticed the basketballs, but Gellin's eyes were drawn to a set of weights at the opposite end of the aisle. He watched as a man picked one up, curled it a few times while grimacing, and then put it down, shaking his arm. Gellin, realizing that he hadn't done any sort of official exercise since they landed, picked up the same weight. He pumped it above his head with ease. He grabbed larger and larger sets and did the same until he moved to a long bar with circular weights on each side. A group had stopped to admire him at this point, and Gellin prepared to wow them, setting his feet in a prepared stance. He lifted a 300-pound weight clear above his head, taking one arm off for further effect. Waiting for applause, he remarked to the store clerk.
Shouldn't these be heavier if you're going to use them to get stronger?
The clerk walked away, shaking her head.
That's the strongest kid I've ever seen,
She remarked to her manager, who was also staring at Gellin with a mouth so agape An entire Likey could have crawled inside. Before Gellin could put the weight down, Franklin and Nick came around the corner, and she scolded him for wasting time. He dropped the weight, which crashed to the ground, making a dent in the wooden floor. Franklin wasn't the only one who was irritated. None of them had collected any significant amount of dust. They were all exhausted from walking, and no one had seen Paul or Floyd in over an hour. They bickered until Fasco spotted the girl that had shot the fadeaway jumper over Franklin, now purchasing a basketball with her parents.
We should follow a child,
she remarked.
That will get you on several lists,
Nick retorted.
I'm serious. Everywhere we've been so far is crowded with adult humans. They've gotten us nowhere.
Franklin, a tad bitter that she hadn't made the connection before, admitted that this would agree with her usage theory. They followed the couple and child, staying a few paces back, and she explained her findings to Gellin and Fasco. Deep in conversation, they almost didn't notice a small green blurb on their left, enveloped by a vibrating chair. The vibration stopped, and Paul sat up, looking refreshed.
This is what you've gotten yourself into this whole time?
Franklin rolled her eyes.
Where's Floyd?
Paul jumped up and stretched.
I reckon he's found another machine to hook into, make a few metal babies. Are we going now? You are insufferable.
Gellin moaned.
You're completely out of it on this earth rug. Same as the slime crystals with you, huh? What damage will you do this time?
Enough!
Franklin scorned them.
None of you are taking this seriously enough. If we don't get heaping amounts of dust today, our probability of getting home halves itself. Look, they're entering a toy store. Sober up. No nonsense from now on.
Inside the toy store was an absolute clusterfluke of nonsense. Children of all ages let go of any inhibition, touching, licking, throwing, kicking, running, and jumping. Actually, Franklin had a hard time discerning between some of the adults and the children. Even the tallest humans had stars in their eyes when they saw the endless lineup of playthings. Fasco pulled a cylindrical tube from his shelf and pressed a button ejecting a thinner, red section of the toy. To her delight, it made a whooshing sound and glowed. At this, a woman with a short haircut and long fingernails bent down and grabbed Fasco's hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
The woman apologized when Fasco squirmed.
I thought you were my daughter. She's going through a purple phase, too.
A man with a buzz cut and collared red shirt stomped over to the Flovans.
Are y'all part of the clown's act? Get him under control. He's scaring the children.
Buzzcut pointed to a corner of the store where the aforementioned clown was twisting air-filled red tubes into headless animals and growling.
Time to float.
Fasco shuddered at the sight of his spiky orange hair, painted face, and teeth like a snake's. He looked like something out of a child's nightmare. She elbowed Gellin, encouraging him that it was finally time to protect some people. Gellin cleared his throat and announced,
Hey buddy, you're scaring these kids with your appearance.
The clown sneered back at him.
What are you supposed to be? Frankenstein?
A child raised his hand and asked the clown,
Can you make a bear?
Boy, so I can miss the playoffs and break my heart again.
Franklin whispered to the Flovans.
This clown clearly has some issues best worked out with a medical professional. Let's get to finding and collecting dust. I have a good feeling about this place.
She brought out her dust detector, which was promptly snatched by a bushy-eyebrowed boy on a skateboard. He examined the detector and decided he wanted it more than anything else in the store. Franklin stumbled after him, but as she grabbed for the detector, the child began to wail. Numerous adults looked at the commotion, hoping it wasn't one of their kids. A woman with similar bushy eyebrows marched over, seized the precious Flovan technology from Franklin's orange hands, and threatened to call the authorities if little Donnie didn't get to keep his toy. When she sheepishly walked back to the group, Paul plopped down on a beanbag chair and closed his eyes. Franklin tapped him on the shoulder.
Give me yours if you're not going to use it.
Can't.
He droned.
Broke it earlier. Testing out something called pizza.
You have got to be... Who still has working detectors?
She asked the group. Gellin and Fasco raised their hands.
All right then. We will have to make it work, but I'll be supervising every step. We can't afford to break or lose any more.
Down the next aisle, every single space on the shelves was filled with the season's hottest toy. Chaos Man could squirt water, hang upside down, and kick enemies in the shins. Kids could open his see-through helmet to touch his spongy brain, and he came with a standard teal jacket and interchangeable accessories. Gellin picked a box off the shelf and held it out for Franklin to scan. 0 specs. Fasco and Gellin dropped their heads dejected, but Franklin put up her hand as she saw a young girl, using an unboxed Chaos Man to spray water into the back of her brother's head. Nick whispered something in the girl's ear and handed her a 3-pronged gadget that spun when she touched it. She gleefully handed him the action figure, and he shrugged at the confused group.
I just traded her something I found at the dump. Okay, scientist, give it a scan.
Paul was enjoying a pleasant dream where he had overthrown the Flovan Council and was using Flova Labs to manufacture pizzas when a familiar voice roused him out of his fantasy.
I knew it had to be you. Is this the thief who tried to steal your son's toy, Ms.
The mall cop asked the bushy-eyebrowed woman.
You can just call me Karen. And no, that's not the little weirdo. That one had an orange mask and green fuzzy wig.
Right. There must be some comic convention in town. Whatever, we'll take this one into custody anyways.
He seized Paul by the hand.
For what crime?
Paul exclaimed.
For bringing in an illegal robot into my mall. I'm not sure why I can't find its power source, but I can't get the damn thing to shut off.
What did you do with him?
I locked it in my office. It's not getting out of there.
The mall cop smirked. In a back corner of a toy store, Nick, Franklin, Gellin, and Fasco were finally fulfilling their original mission. Every time they picked up a tester toy, it read off the charts with dust. The extraction process was instant, thanks to the brilliant technology that Flovan engineers had worked on tirelessly before the launch. But it wasn't without consequences. When they removed dust from an Earth object, it was left pale and gray. And because the boosters had exploded on their journey to Earth, the dust extractors had limited energy to collect dust. They would need to be selective. They found a nook of used books, and Gellin picked one that featured a mysterious-looking creature with an oversized red and white hat on the cover. He scanned it and chuckled.
This makes absolutely no sense. Why did they let this man in their house?
Nick read it over his shoulder.
That's no man. It's a cat. And there's a lesson in there if you read closely.
Fasco selected a well-worn book featuring a happy brunette girl wearing a pack and playing with a cute animal in shoes.
What's the lesson of this one?
She asked Nick. He said, glancing at the book.
Never let a monkey wear shoes?
That doesn't sound right.
Well, it's in Spanish.
Where's your translation device?
Quizzed Franklin, narrowing her eyes. Just then, Gellin had attempted to extract dust from his book when the detector became so hot he had to drop it to the ground. Franklin hurried over, but it was too late. The detector had malfunctioned and shattered when it hit the floor.
What happened?
I don't know. It was so hot, even I couldn't hold on to it.
Why can't they handle these dust levels without overheating?
Franklin shook her head, nearly in tears, and whipped back around to Nick.
You have some explaining to do. How can you read English without a translator?
I practiced my English before we came on the mission. Reading, writing, slang, so I could fit in at parties. Did Flova Labs know where we would all land?
Well, we theorized that sparks would land at different locations if there was trouble on the journey, as the meta-highway touches all places in the known universe, but random locations. To my knowledge, we couldn't predict where, though I thought we would have the tech done in time.
The horrid sound of another detector popping, coupled with Fasco screaming, interrupted Franklin's scientific pondering. Their last detector had zapped her hand, and she had tossed it toward a shelf, shattering the nozzle into pieces.
I'm so sorry. I was only reading the dust level of the book. It hit 100 before it fizzled out on me. Oh, Glorb, what did I do?
Oh, that's our last working detector.
Franklin slumped to the floor.
I think I can fix poles if it's still in one piece.
Nick said, offering her his hand and pulling her up.
We need to take it back to that shop. I spotted some tools in there. Grab the dust from those 2 books and let's get out of here.
They tucked the 2 gray books behind a shelf and went looking for Paul at the front. They were shocked to see him being led away by the mall cop.
What did he do now?
Bushy eyebrows spotted Franklin and started motioning toward the Flovans.
What did we do now?
Nick pointed beyond the mall cop. Rapidly advancing toward them, Floyd was riding a Segway at a speed well beyond the programmed limit for humans. They couldn't hear him from that distance, but reading his metal lips, they could tell he was screaming.
I will not leave him alone.
Floyd crashed into the mall cop at top speed, knocking them both into a large display of tacky hats. The entire crowd held their breath. And then, the droid popped up wearing a sparkly pink cowboy hat on top of a baseball cap. Every child who had previously picked out a Chaos Man shifted their attention to begging their parents for Floyd instead. Before the group of younglings could tear his metallic limbs off, Fasco ordered him to not follow them, and then they all ran down the stairs toward escape. When they were only a few paces away from the door, Gellin pancaked a familiar gray face, who was holding the photos of them they had left at the photo booth. Rebus, looking incredibly weary, grimaced as he picked himself up, and then forced a smile when he recognized a few of the Flovans.
Greetings, all. Been looking everywhere for you. Your families and friends back on Flova would be happy to see you here on Earth. Smile and wave for the streamer.
They all faked enthusiasm and looked into its lens, hoping no one back home would see their frazzled nerves. Nick, covertly examining the Game Boy for broken parts, ducked behind Gellin when he realized what the streamer was for. Fasco put on a brave face and said,
See, Mom, I made it. And I'm purple now. Actually, don't worry about that. I'm totally fine.
In an exceptionally long office back on Flova, Damus finished recording his daily holo announcements and laid his head back with a long sigh.
How long would it take the machines over at the Cyborg Center to create an exact droid replica of me to appear on those announcements?
He inquired, taking off the under-eye gels which made him appear 10 years younger on screen.
Approximately 6 days, 8 hours, and 2 minutes.
Supercomputer Big Data replied, flashing its single purple light like a cyclops.
Are they that slow? We need to monitor their output. They're getting lazy. Crank down their desires for breaks and up their desire for stimuslush. They should crave one every few hours.
Do you no longer have interest in talking to your citizens?
Asked the monotone voice Damus had recently installed in Big Data.
Of course I do. It would still be my inspiring words to reach their ears, but I just wasted half of the morning trying to pronounce all the names of the mission group who brokered peace between warring countries at the southern tip of the Earth.
Damus knew this part of his announcement had been beyond stretching the truth. That group had landed in a remote section of the coldest ocean on Earth. They were dead beyond a doubt. Their families would never know that, though. They would believe that the group had decided to stay and rule made-up factions as heroes.
Have you found them yet?
He snapped at Big Data.
They landed at the following coordinates in the Southern Ocean.
Not them, you hunk of dust-consuming junk. I'm talking about Group Zero.
This mission wasn't all about bringing back dust. Even though the dissenters in Biospheres 16 and 17, who were whispering in back channels, were correct that it was not some sort of charity initiative. His carefully placed spies on the outer domes kept him informed about any major threats to public morale. Damus would let them continue to send their messages for a while, if only to keep the focus off the more sinister aspect of his scheme. Big Data worried for a moment, then answered.
I have pinpointed Group Zero's most likely landing point, and we have footage from the streamer that suggests they did in fact make it to that city. However, the streamer technician has not been able to catch up to the group yet. He is.
Damus walked toward a holo monitor. He watched the live stream as Rebus, the Gleam streamer operator assigned to the group, stepped in a puddle and splashed water all over the lens.
He's lost! Why did we pick this buffoon? The Galuth porthole to Earth won't be open for long. This is my best shot.
He was the correct choice. Do you remember?
Suddenly, Fasco's bright purple face took over the monitor. She was waving, and Damus spotted Gellin and Franklin behind her. And then, an older Flovan with a dark beard briefly appeared before the stream swiftly cut off. Damus's mood went from dejected to incredibly bullish. He waved a hand over a square on his desk, and a virtual assistant appeared, her hair neatly tied in a perfect bun. He commanded her to send Reeno Franklin to his office.
Reeno,
he purred when she walked into his perfectly round office after more than an hour.
Where have you been? You're lucky that you're the only person I don't mind waiting on.
Oh, I've been watching Ray's Earth adventures for hours this morning. Though the quality of this stream hasn't been the best. I can only get black and white to come through my new monitor I purchased specifically for this.
She walked over to one of Damus's many monitors and pointed at her daughter, who was getting herself into a domestic pickle, wearing an old-fashioned dress and yelling at a man named Ricky.
Ree.
He put a hand on her shoulder.
I have something to admit. I've been running fake streams for some of the Flovan groups because I didn't want to alarm the planet. But I'll tell you because I trust you, and because I think you deserve to know what's going on with your daughter. We've lost coordinates of some of the Flovan groups.
Reeno began hyperventilating, needing a slightly awkward Damus to help her sit down until her AT could override her extreme emotional spike.
The boosters! I knew they would be an issue. I told you they would be too powerful. You wouldn't let me. I mean, you strongly encouraged me to overlook the problems.
I won't let you put the blame on me for any malfunctions with the boosters. They were your idea after all.
Damus quipped in a harsher tone than before.
Reeno, we can discuss the semantics of who's responsible another day. Right now, we need to ensure that your daughter and her group are not in danger.
Reeno started rapidly tapping her foot in groups of 3. A sort of sick waltz to keep from totally losing it.
The psyche-likey,
crooned Big Data.
Brilliant. I need you to bring your daughter's psyche-likey to headquarters as fast as possible. Take one of my hovercrafts if you need to. The Likey's telepathic connection should be able to get us some answers.
Reeno voiced her concern that the connection wouldn't be possible with this much distance, but he waved her off and commanded her to bring it to him. Damus knew it would be truly difficult for the Likey to connect with its Flovans so far away, but he would do anything to make it give up Ray's coordinates. The only person in the world who could bring down everything he had worked for was with her.